My name is Natalie Reeves. I was 29 back then, and I had just started working at a startup called Blue Wire in Austin, Texas. UX designer sounds fancy, but in reality, you're just the person who makes buttons look nice and begs clients not to plaster pink Comic Sans all over the dashboard. The office was downtown, a brick building with vintage windows and an open space that smelled of coffee and fresh tech hype. My mentor was Caroline Mason. You know the type? Tall, always perfectly coiffed, dressed in Reese with a look like a woman who definitely knows who's boss here. From day one, she took me under her wing, or rather, under her boot. Listen carefully, this isn't college. Here, you either know what you're doing or you leave. Got it? I nodded. Of course I nodded. I dreamed about this job. I swallowed every word, even when those words were coated in sarcasm like chocolate. Caroline showed me projects, told me how to properly talk to clients, which words not to say in presentations, where to put accents in the interface, and every time she added, "Without me, you'd get lost on the very first project. Honestly, Nat, you're still green." She said it in front of everyone, smiling as if joking. But she was the only one laughing. The others looked away. And me? I laughed too, because I didn't know what else to do. She was the founder Travis's favorite. They had their own language, jokes, hints, endless meetings behind closed doors. The rest just tried not to step on her tail. Caroline was one of those people feared more than respected. I was a shadow, not an employee, not a person, a shadow. Every morning I came to work with a slight nausea. Put on my headphones, tried not to mess up, not to ask a stupid question. Everything I did, she reviewed, redid, commented. You're sweet, of course, but your interface is basically PowerPoint with feelings. Oh, you decided to make the CTA button blue? How original, Natalie. Next time, maybe throw in some Comic Sans too, all right? I said, thank you for the feedback. I said, sure, instead of why. I said, I'll try instead of this is already the 4th iteration, Caroline, maybe enough? But inside something like rust was building up. A slow corrosion of confidence, doubt eating away drop by drop. I'd come home, stare at the monitor, and couldn't even decide what I wanted for dinner. I'd forgotten how to choose. She chose everything. Even the button color. Every time I thought, maybe I'm not so bad after all, her voice was there next to me. For now, stick with me. Without me, you're nobody here. And I held on. For a long time. Silent. Because I was taught to be grateful. Because Caroline's resume said, 15 years in digital design. And mine just 2 lines and 1 internship. But at some point, I stopped just listening. I started hearing. Hearing how she repeated my ideas as her own. Hearing how on group calls she said, Natalie will help, I've already explained everything to her. Hearing her laugh when someone praised the project I made. Hearing and not forgiving. I knew this wasn't right. But for too long I believed this was the price of experience, that this was how you learn, that everyone goes through it. And then there would be a turning point. But for now, I was still in the shadow. A shadow under a woman who kept saying, without me, you wouldn't even have passed the interview. Have you ever been someone's talent they talk about like a pet cat? You know, like, look how smart she is. I taught her to sit and not meow loudly. That's what I was to Caroline. She kept teaching me, but it wasn't teaching, it was training. She never said, great idea, Natalie. She said, yeah, it'll do, only because I corrected it in time. Or, well, if I hadn't edited your presentation, the client would have just fallen asleep. Any success I had, she turned into her successful mentorship. Within the team, it looked like this. I did the analysis, the prototype, the testing. She took everything finished and with a perfect smile presented it. Without even looking at the details. Without even saying thanks. At best, Natalie helped, like I was a coffee assistant. In the meeting room hung a Steve Jobs quote. Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. I looked at it every Friday when we handed in projects. Because I did the work, and she did the look. Once, I spent a sleepless weekend testing the user journey for one of our key clients in Houston. I showed up Monday with dark circles under my eyes, but a perfect case. During the presentation, Caroline took the floor calmly and said, I reworked the route logic and introduced important UX decisions. Natalie helped me with the visuals. Good job, Natalie. The visuals. I had created the entire journey from pain points to A/B tests. She gave me the title of visual assistant. Colleagues nodded. No one said a word. Because, well, it was Caroline. After that, I went to the bathroom and stood there for 10 minutes staring at the mirror. I saw the face of a woman who did everything right and still became the background. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was too sensitive. But then I started collecting facts, screenshots, emails, timesheets. I began to see the pattern. I work. She presents. I come up with ideas. She tells the story. Then that night happened. The company party open bar, glowing bracelets, a DJ with a beard spinning Lizzo and Arctic Monkeys remixes. I was standing at the bar with a non-alcoholic mojito trying to relax a bit. Nearby a group from marketing, Caroline in the center, everyone laughing. And then I hear her voice, clear, crisp. She says to one of the new girls, Natalie, she's okay, just ordinary, gray. Without me, she wouldn't survive in this industry. I keep her in check or she'd fall apart. Laughter, glasses clink. And in my head, silence. Real silence, the kind that comes before a storm. I don't even remember how I left the room. I only remember standing in the parking lot, phone in hand and inside, like someone switched off the light. Not out of hurt, out of awakening. I'd been living under someone's glass dome all this time. Not as part of a team, not in partnership, but under a lid she held tight like a can. And while I thought I was learning, she was learning from me. Learning to appropriate. And to convince me that without her, I was nothing. But at that moment, I thought for the first time, what if she's afraid that I might become someone even without her? Sometimes things change not because you decided so, but because someone didn't show up to a call. It was a typical Tuesday. 9:55 a.m. Caroline was supposed to lead a tough call with a client from Austin, a major retailer we were trying to sign a yearly contract with. The topic, UX redesign of their mobile app, which they wanted to launch before the holiday season. She always led these calls herself. I was allowed, at most, to sit on Zoom and take notes. But at 9:57, she messaged me on Slack. Wi-Fi is down. Lead the call yourself, but don't promise anything. Just don't screw it up. I remember my fingers trembling. Then focus kicked in sharply. I opened Zoom, turned on my camera, smiled, and said, Hi everyone, this is Natalie. I'll be leading today's discussion while Caroline sorts out a tech issue. And it began. At first, I just followed the agenda. Then I started improvising, answering clarifying questions, showing the prototype in Figma. Halfway through, someone on their team said, Wow, you really know this product inside out. And I said, That's because I built it, every single flow. And I didn't look away from the camera. At the end of the call, the client Steve from their product team thanked me personally, said he was impressed by the depth of my work and confidence. 2 hours later, I got an email. Natalie, thank you for today's call. It was the most productive discussion we've had so far. Without Caroline copied. I sat staring at that email like it was evidence against my own fear. Turns out I can do it, without her, without spoon-feeding, without protection. I printed the email and put it in a folder. Then I did what I used to consider betrayal. I went to our product director, Jared. And I said it straight. I led that call. Everything I presented was my work, and I want you to know that. Jared looked at me a little surprised, then just nodded. I suspected as much. Thanks for telling me. Keep it up. That day, I didn't just lead a call. I drew a line between my old self and the new. But the joy didn't last long. The next morning, Carolyn stood by my desk with a face like I'd burned down her LinkedIn. So now you decided to shine at my expense? It was my work, Caroline. I just stepped forward. She didn't reply, just nodded and left. From that day, a cold war began. She stopped tagging me in tasks. Started rewriting my Jira tickets, signing them as her own. Interrupted me in meetings. Forgot to copy me on emails, but mostly silence and hints. She told others, "Natalie's going through a star phase now, but it'll pass." She tried to shove me back into the shadow role. But something was different now, because I was already hearing myself. I was already hearing the client thanking me. I was already talking to leadership without fainting. And most importantly, I was already seeing that I could. She could play her behind-the-scenes games. But for the first time I felt, I have a choice not to play. I was no longer nobody without her. I was becoming someone despite her. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. I didn't post dramatic messages on LinkedIn. I just left. At some point you realize, victory isn't a loud exit. It's a silent escape with dignity. After a month of behind-the-scenes sabotage and cold silence from Caroline, I woke up every morning thinking, "You've already quit. You just haven't told anyone yet." The decision didn't come after a fight. Not after humiliation, but after lunch in the parking lot. I was sitting in my car, eating a salad from Whole Foods, staring at the Blue Wire building, that glass anthill in South Lake Union, where everyone seemed busy but no one truly alive. I thought, if I spend another year here, I'll start turning into Caroline. Harsh, burnt out, pointlessly important. And that's when I opened my laptop and wrote an email. To HR. Subject: resignation. No complaints. No explanations. Just, my last working day will be May 14. Thank you for the experience. Natalie Brown. The next day, inside me was surprisingly calm. I did my work, talked with the team, updated documentation. Caroline didn't suspect a thing. She found out 2 days before I left. Called me. No greeting. "You quit? You couldn't even be bothered to tell me?" I stayed silent. You know, outside the office, no one wants someone like you. You're only good inside the structure, the team, the background. Freelance? You'd burn out in a month. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. I just hung up, closed Slack, finished my tasks, left my laptop at reception, and walked out. No box, no next big thing, no farewell photos. Just walked out feeling like I pulled myself out of a cage I had entered willingly. Because once, I thought learning from Caroline was a chance. But maybe some lessons are only meant to teach you to stop bending over backwards. My last glance at the office window wasn't sad. It was quietly triumphant. Let's see, Caroline. Let's see what you're worth outside the office. Spoiler alert, she'll write to me 6 months later. But that's a whole other story. Austin, Texas. Summer, hot, muggy, dusty. A city I didn't move to for the weather but for freedom. I opened my own micro studio for UX consulting and called it Clarity Grid. The name came unexpectedly in a cafe on South Congress. I was staring at a grid in Figma and thought, clarity, that's what I've always been missing. In work, in life, in myself. Clarity Grid started with one laptop, a pair of headphones, and Wi-Fi I shared with my neighbor through the wall. No clients, no investments, no guarantees. There was only a list of skills I had hidden behind Caroline, and that I could finally bring into the light. The first month was hell. I woke up at 5:30, drank too much coffee, checked my email 100 times a day. Expenses, $2,300 a month. Income, $0. By the third month, I had to sell my tablet to pay for the co-working space rent. One dinner was just rice and ketchup. Loneliness became almost physical. I didn't miss Caroline. I missed belonging. But every evening, I sat down and wrote case studies, articles, observations about honest UX, the value of micro-interactions, the power of clarity. LinkedIn became my office. Design communities my network. I left comments, joined AMAs, did free audits, and slowly started building my audience. 4 months later, an email arrived. A company from San Francisco. A health tech startup. We've read your notes. We like your approach. We want you to help us rebuild our onboarding flow. Budget $8,000. I read the email 3 times. Checked if it was a fake. And I cried. It wasn't just my first client. It was proof that I hadn't lost my mind. That I was not nothing. That my name was no longer under Caroline's slide. But on the invoice. In the signature. In the decisions. Now I worked 12-hour days and didn't get tired. I was deep in Figma. Checking form validations. Calling founders at 10 p.m. and smiling when they thanked me. It wasn't just a job. It was a job where I didn't have to prove myself through others. For the first time, I understood the value of working for yourself, but not against yourself. My calendar was no longer Google Calendar, where I got slotted into someone else's plans. It was a living document where I built my own path. Clarity Grid wasn't making millions yet, but it was bringing pride. And pride, it turned out, was worth more than a salary at an office that treats you like gray background noise. And somewhere on the horizon, I knew. Just a little more and Caroline will find out. Maybe even she'll ask for a job. But that's a story for the next chapter. You know how sometimes it feels like success comes out of nowhere? But really, it comes after hundreds of hours of thinking, why am I even doing this? That's exactly how it was for me. I finished redesigning the onboarding flow for that health tech startup from San Francisco. I posted a detailed case study on Medium before and after, analytics, mistakes, lessons learned. No fluff, no marketing gloss, just the honest process. 2 days later, it landed in Product Hunt Weekly, then on Reddit's r/UX Design, then on Twitter. Comments started pouring in. Great explanation. Clean and clear. Finally, someone talks design without the hype. The case got reposted by 2 podcasts and a major studio from Chicago. A week later, I got an email from the UX Conf organizers in Denver. We want you on our panel about honest UX, a 20-minute talk, all expenses covered. I read the email several times. Still couldn't believe they were inviting me. Me, the one nobody noticed before. Me, whose ideas others used to take credit for. The next day, I had to open Airtable because client requests started flooding in. That was the moment I realized I'm no longer chasing projects. They're finding me. I created a funnel, quick brief, interview filter. I rejected half of the requests not for values, style, or people. I no longer needed to tolerate toxicity for money. I was choosing. I was setting the rules. I was building the game. By the 3rd month after the viral case study, I realized I couldn't handle it all alone. I set up Notion and posted an ad, looking for a part-time assistant. A week later, Kayla showed up, a young, motivated UX designer from Dallas with ideas and a clear head. Then came Jeremy coding, animations, a bit of front-end. Now, I wasn't just working. I was building a team. For the first time ever on my business card, even if it was virtual, in Zoom and Slack was my name. Natalie Reed, founder. Not junior. Not assistant. Not Caroline's helper. But me. I arrived in Denver wearing a black blazer and a white tee, a style Caroline would never have approved. Spoke on stage in front of UX directors, product managers, and CEOs. Talking about transparency, the power of user interviews, how important it is not to hide design behind ego. After the talk, a man in his 50s approached me. Natalie, you're incredible. I forwarded your case to our whole team. Thank you. Where do you work? At Blue Wire. I froze for a second. Blue Wire. My past. I smiled, nodded, and walked on. No more shadows followed me. Now, the name on that card wasn't just my name. It was my story. My pain, my growth, and my triumph. And Caroline? Oh, wait. That's the next chapter. The morning started as usual. Oatmeal, a cup of freshly ground coffee, a quick check of Clarity Grid's email before the morning Zoom call. And then it was there. An email, plain and simple. Subject: Project Manager Application. Sender: Caroline. Mason at. I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Hello, my name is Caroline Mason. I am interested in the project manager position at your studio. I have over 10 years of experience in digital production, managing UX projects, and client communication. I would appreciate the opportunity to interview. Sincerely, Caroline. Caroline. The very same Caroline. The woman who made me doubt myself. Who crushed my self-esteem with passive aggression and cynicism. Who called me nobody out loud in front of others. And now she's applying to work for me? I opened the PDF. A clean, polished resume. Experience, Blue Wire Team Lead UX. Then some unclear project in Miami, just 6 months. Then consulting in New York, no details. Then a gap. A whole year. At the bottom, skills, Figma, Trello, Asana, client communication. I looked at it all and realized it's been less than 3 years. 3 years ago, I was afraid to say no to her behind closed doors. And now I'm holding her resume in my hands and deciding whether to give her a chance. Kayla popped into my Google Meet with new ideas for a client interface from Texas. I nodded, still holding one name in my mind, Caroline Mason. I could have ignored it. I could have rejected her coldly. I could have just forgotten about it. But I scheduled a meeting. Monday, 10 a.m. Zoom. Because I wanted to hear her voice. Look her in the eyes even if through a screen. And finally close that chapter for myself. Why? Not for revenge. Not for spite. But for me. For the Natalie who once trembled at her comments, clenched her teeth from humiliation, and thought, maybe I really am just gray and useless. I wanted to go back not as a victim, but as a woman who rewrote her own role. And this time, everything will be different. I walked into the reception area and saw her entering. Caroline. A stylish blazer, thick-rimmed glasses, that signature walk with a slight arrogance. She looked around the office, white walls, minimalism, MacBooks on desks, a big screen showing charts. Then her gaze landed on me. A moment of silence. Her eyebrows lifted just a little, but I noticed. You're? She smiled slightly. You built this? Wow. I nodded quietly. Gestured toward the conference room. Please, come in. We're scheduled for 10 o'clock. We sat down facing each other. I opened my laptop, pulled up her resume. For the first time ever, I felt neither fear, nor jealousy, nor anger. I felt power. Not the kind that crushes from above, but the kind that stands on its own feet. Let's start with your experience, I said calmly. How can you contribute to our team? She clearly wasn't expecting such formality. Expected? What? Warmth? Nostalgia for the good old days? Leniency? Well, she began, folding her hands. I'm skilled at managing UX projects, handling client crises. Worked with different teams. I think I can bring structure and experience. I nodded. That was true. But now I set the terms. I was leading, she was the applicant. At some point, she shifted slightly. Confidence gave way to tense calm. Her eyes darted around the room, the table, my laptop. I asked a few direct questions. How do you handle criticism from junior colleagues? What do you do if your viewpoint conflicts with the team's decision? She answered, trying to sound wise. But the air was thick with the knowledge. She knew things had changed. I paused. Closed my laptop. Looked her in the eyes. We currently have one open position. A UX project intern. $20 an hour. Part-time. 3-month probation. She blinked. I saw her chin tremble. An intern, she repeated. Yes, that's where I started. And if you really want to work with us, it's an honest beginning. The pause was long. The silence heavy. And suddenly, she looked down and nodded. I will think about it. Thank you, Natalie. I stood up and shook her hand. Thank you, Caroline. Let me know by the end of the week. When the door closed behind her, I sat back down and smiled. Quietly, without triumph, without bitterness. Simply a circle closed. Sometimes in life, the moment comes when you return to the place where you were humiliated, but as a different person. Stronger. More confident. Calmer. I didn't want revenge. I just put a period. She agreed. 3 days later, Caroline sent me an email. Hello, Natalie. I accept your offer. Thank you for the opportunity. Best regards, Caroline Mason. And so Monday, 9 a.m. The office door opens. She walks in, laptop in hand and a neat new hairstyle. Now she's intern Caroline. Every morning she gets a task list in Notion. Review client briefs. Prepare a draft presentation. Respond to clarification emails. Check project timing. No key decisions. No lead roles. The work she once dumped on me. The team, of course, knew who she was. One day, my designer Joe approached me by the coffee machine. That's the Caroline? Yes, I said calmly. She's interning. He just nodded silently. No whispers or irony in the office. Just professional respect. But their eyes were definitely watching. Caroline did her work. Politely, on time, without complaints. Sometimes even trying too hard. I saw her typing with a focused face, double-checking every word, waiting for my feedback, not defiantly, not challengingly, but the way I once waited for hers. A week passed. Then the second. On the third Monday, she approached me after the stand-up. Natalie, can I ask something? I nodded. You set this up on purpose, didn't you? So I'd go through what you went through? I looked at her tired but not arrogant face, and answered calmly. Number. I just gave you what you never gave me. A chance to start over. She stood silently, then nodded. Humility isn't defeat if it leads to growth. That night I couldn't sleep. Staring at the ceiling, I thought, how strange. Once I dreamed of revenge, of rubbing it in, of humiliation. But now I've just grown. I'm not above anyone. I am free. And that is the difference between power and authority. Several months had passed since Caroline became my assistant. Life at the Clarity Grid microstudio was buzzing: projects, clients, growth. One day, I received a call from a major business award organization. They recognize women's contributions to small business development. Natalie, you have been nominated as one of the most influential female entrepreneurs in Texas, they told me. At first, I didn't believe it, but the invitation to the ceremony was real. The awards evening in Austin, the hall shining with lights. I'm wearing a dress I bought in my first month after leaving Blue Wire without worrying who would approve. My name is called on stage. My heart races, but I walk confidently. A week later, an interview appears in Bloomberg. From subordinate to founder, how Natalie built a business overcoming toxic mentorship. I share my story, not hiding the pain or mistakes. About the importance of not being afraid to take the first step. About how strength is not control over others, but control over yourself. In the audience during the interview filming, I notice a familiar face. Caroline. She sits at the back of the room, listening attentively. No anger, no envy, just listening. A few days later, she comes to my office. Without a word, she hands me a cup of coffee. I smile, understanding this is a sign of recognition and perhaps the start of a new path for both of us. The final shot, me at my desk in the Clarity Grid office. Before me, a laptop, a stack of documents. On the desk, a nameplate. Natalie Carter, founder and CEO. Voiceover. She said without her, I was nobody. Now she's part of my team. But most importantly, I realized, without myself, I really would be nobody. And I found myself when I stopped listening to other people's labels. The story is over. But for me, it's only the beginning.